Hello, welcome to Legal Action. My name is David Siegel. Thanks for joining us. Today we're going to be talking about debt relief, Chapter 7, Chapter 13, and some non-bankruptcy alternatives. Particularly, we're dealing with a Should I File segment. This is where we have information about viewers and listeners who have written to us with their particular situation and are wondering how they can be helped. Joining me as always, once again, is Jesse Barrientos, my co-host. Jesse, how are you, sir?
Great, Dave. How are you this evening?
I'm doing well. So here we go. People want to know, how can they be helped on their particular situation?
Right, with these particular sets of facts, and we have various scenarios from actual clients, and it would be very helpful for the people at home. And, you know, just in case so the people know at home, it's very important for them to go to a bankruptcy attorney who does bankruptcy for their unique situation, correct?
That's right. And we're at legalactiontv.com if someone wants to send in their particular question or based on their fact pattern, legalactiontv.com.
And we'd be happy to be able to entertain that situation. But let's jump right in and get started. We have a Justin from Waukegan, Illinois. And these are just kind of a basic facts, okay? First, he's not a homeowner, so doesn't own any real estate. He's not renting, he's living with his family, so that's not an issue there. He has a 2000 Chevy Monte Carlo. He says it's worth about $3,500, but he owes about $5,600 on that. So there's just a little bit of equity in there. He also owns another 87 Monte Carlo that's worth about $2,500, but he owes more on it. He owes about $42 on that. And but that's to a payday loan company, so that's a different. It's not to the actual car finance people. And has checking and savings. He's got less than $600 combined, so kind of pretty much living paycheck to paycheck kind of situation. Normal clothing valued at about $500, and really no household goods. And again, that's really at garage sale value kind of thing. And then he's single. And he's working as a vendor, has been working for the past 6 months only at this particular job. Earns about $1,300 per month, but spends $1,800 per month. So obviously, I know he doesn't need us to tell him that he's spending more than he's earning there, and that's true for a lot of people. Owes child support and is behind about $800. Has a lawsuit against him, and he's had several addresses within the last 2 years. Now, it doesn't say so, but in these situations, sometimes what happens is, people kind of move around to avoid detection and to avoid, kind of having to pay the piper for your living situation.
Or they're being evicted and being forced out in a forcible detainer action.
True enough. And then he owes for his student loans. But he's paid his payday loan, medical bills, utility bills, phone bills, and minor credit card bills. And the issue for him is, should Justin file, and if so, which chapter?
Okay, well, a couple things scream out at me.
Yep.
One, he's earning less than what he's spending per month.
So what does that mean, Dave? If you're earning $1,500 and you're spending $1,800, what does that mean after a year?
He's running a deficit, kind of like the federal government. We're running a deficit as well.
Boy, I think it's a whole lot more than that.
Yeah, because he can't go print it.
That's right.
That's the difference. So he's running a deficit, and now I'm also going to look at his asset situation. You had mentioned no real estate.
No real estate.
So you don't need to worry about any equity issue there. The one vehicle that's paid for, strike that. Both vehicles have no equity because he's got loans against both.
Right, but he's got one that's it's only worth, so he's upside down on him.
Okay, and the other one he got a title loan. So,
exactly.
I would recommend maybe giving up one of the vehicles if he winds up doing a fresh start. You don't need two vehicles. He's single.
Which would you keep? The 87 Monte Carlo? He apparently likes Monte Carlo, so he's got an 87 and he's got a 2000.
Well, I'd probably keep the one that's in better shape because there's liens against both, and he can choose to surrender either one in full satisfaction of the debt. I'd want to see if he can work any more hours or pick up a part-time job to supplement his income a little bit because he is running a deficit. He has to pay that child support. That's not going away.
What is about his list of bills? I mean, just the basic scenario I gave you, just list the kind of basic kind of things. I know when we do an intake consultation, they fill out a form that is pretty detailed because we need to know when we're going through this with them exactly what they're spending on and what they're spending it on. And what, the government, believe it or not, folks, okay, the government has an allowable amount of expenses. One of the examples that always screams to me, Dave, is $350 for food for one person a month, and then $50 for each person thereafter, which is pretty incredible to me.
Right. Well, the way the law is set up, they want to make sure that you have the ability to either pay off your debt,
right,
or if you pass the means test, that means you don't have the ability to repay, and then you should be able to get a fresh start under Chapter 7. So they have to put these parameters in, and they're using IRS guidelines, the same guidelines that the IRS uses to determine whether or not they can collect upon you.
Well, Dave, what happens if I'm 500 pounds, okay? I mean, obviously I'm going to eat more than $350 worth of food a month.
No, you might have a thyroid condition.
Well, that's true. Is there like a sliding scale, or is it exactly 350? How does that work?
It's really not a sliding scale. You have to eat reasonably according to the IRS, unless you have some kind of dietary issues.
Right.
For example, maybe you keep kosher, or maybe you have a health issue where you have to eat a certain type of food. But normally people can fall within the parameters of the IRS. It's not that
Sure.
not that difficult. In terms of other things, it looks like a Chapter 7 fresh start would be his best bet.
But
now, this will eliminate most of the debt.
He's mentioned a couple things here that I think it's important for people to know too. For example, I mean, he mentioned that he owes for his student loans, and it's important. He's paid which is killing me here. He's paid his payday loans, medical bills, utility bills, phone bills, and minor credit card bills. Doesn't say he's paid his student loan. Now, it could be that he's in deferral at this point.
It could be. Actually, the details are unknown on that, but we do know he has a student loan. Right. So no matter what it is, whether it's 100 or 100,000, he's got a plan on paying that. And there are programs out there right now where he can consolidate his student loan if it's of a certain type, lower his payment, lower the interest rate. There are things that people can do. But the bottom line here is let's get rid of whatever we can, which is anything other than, in this case, the child support and the student loan, because he's running that deficit. He's taking out title loans on his car. Obviously, there's a problem here.
How's the child support going to work? Because I know there's a lot of people out there. I get a lot of calls in various practice areas, but a lot of them deal with child support for whatever reason it could be. That's not important right now. But he says he's like, what is he? Here it is, $800 behind. So obviously that's not dischargeable. But how does that equate? How does that work out in the? I mean, he still has to pay it. Is it not factored in? Does he get a credit for making a payment and paying the arrearage? How does that work?
In a Chapter 7 fresh start, it's going to be part of his budgetary item, whether it's coming out of his pay through a withholding or whether he's paying it separately. But that must continue. Otherwise, he's going to be held in contempt in family court. His lady has moved to Wisconsin, so I don't know if the case was heard up there. But if so, he's going to have legal problems in Wisconsin, and that could be suspension of the driver's license, rule to show cause, contempt charges. You could even be incarcerated for failure to pay child support. So that's my recommendation in this case, a Chapter 7, fresh start, eliminate what we can, keep paying what we cannot eliminate, see if we can arrange the budget a little bit so a little bit more comes in and a little less goes out. Everybody can make some minor adjustments to improve.
Very good. All right. Here's our next one here. His name is Michael, and he's from Zion. And he's married. However, they don't know whether he's married and his spouse doesn't know whether or not she's going to file or not. Okay, so that's something to think about. They own a home worth about $40,000. The mortgage balance is $95,000, so it would appear they're upside down there.
Quite a bit.
And they have a 2010 Ford pickup with a balance of about $19,000, and the vehicle is probably worth less than that. They also own a Kia outright with a value of about $6,000. It's 2008 Kia. I don't know if that value is correct or not, and
depends on the mileage.
Depends on the mileage, and it's a Kia. All right. They own a 2013 Traveler trailer with a balance of about $10,000. and a value of approximately $20,000. So they're upside down on that. However, those are one of those assets, Dave, where people really can't afford to be able to go out on vacation or do anything else like that. But when they have a trailer or something like that, or even a tent, you could go to a state park and at least have a getaway that's kind of somewhat reasonable within your means and kind of enjoy your
Keep
your
in
family.
mind here that in this fact pattern, in 2013, they went and got this travel trailer. So keep that in mind as we look into this case. That might be something that was deemed unnecessary at some point.
Okay. In the terms of the personal property, they have a checking and savings account. They've got approximately $4,000, but that was as of the time of the intake. And we all know, when you do something like that, I mean, obviously we have bills. If I just got my paycheck and you just got your paycheck and it's direct deposit and it goes into our account, then we have to pay the bills that we have. So realistically, it's not like 4,000 in savings. It's 4,000 as we're talking right now, as of the consultation.
Right.
All right. And minor household goods and minor clothing. Really don't have a whole lot of jewelry. Just like a wedding band, pretty much. That's about it. They have term life insurance. 401k though, worth about $45,000.
Not bad.
All right. So that's something that we need, and it's important. I want to make sure we talk about that and address that, because that's the concern of a lot of people these days. They're married with no children. That might be a plus. Both employed. He's working as a driver, and she's a supervisor. Together, they bring in approximately $6,000 per month. Now, that's probably gross.
That's net.
Oh, that's net. So
That's
you
net.
got the intake form there. Okay, that's net. Okay, ooh, that might be a problem for them. All of their debts per month total about $62.95. So again, nothing that they need us to tell them. They're paying out more than they're bringing in. I mean, that's always the case.
They're close though.
They're close,
They're
but
better than Justin was.
they are. But I mean, still same deal, and that's usually the case. They're not currently being sued, so there are no urgency types of things. They did have a prior address in the last couple of years, and no co-debtors, and no student loans, no tax debt. The issue for them is pretty much $7,500 worth of credit card debt, and whether or not they should file in which chapter. But I just want to mention something real quick. They mentioned that they don't have any co-debtors. It's important for our people at home, our viewers, to know that if you do a bankruptcy and mom or dad or uncle has signed on something, all right, and you do a bankruptcy, what does that mean, Dave? Tell them what it means.
Well, it means the creditor can go after the cosigner.
Can
who
go
didn't
after?
file.
You can count on it. They're going to go after that other person because they're a cosigner. They have no relief now from this person. And it really doesn't matter whether or not you file a bankruptcy, right? They can still go after you if you file a bankruptcy or not, if the other person isn't paying. Is that correct?
The non-filer they can go after, sure.
Absolutely.
Sure. In a Chapter 7.
In a chapter. But what I'm saying is, even if they don't file a Chapter 7, if you're not paying and you're a cosigner, guess what? They're coming after you.
Yeah,
They
you're on the
can.
hook for it,
Right.
no question about it.
All right, so tell us whether or not Michael should file, and if he should, which chapter?
Well, this is a tough call, and it's going to depend on a number of factors. First of all, you mentioned the real estate, which is their biggest asset, valued at $40,000, and they owe $95,000.
Yeah, they're just like many people. They're upside down.
They're effectively renting their own home, because I can't see it ever coming up that much to the point where they would garner any equity. So if they plan on keeping the house, then I would probably say do a Chapter 7, eliminate the debt, and keep paying for the mortgage.
Because I think it doesn't say anything. So my guess here is that they're not behind. I mean, you have the intake
No,
form.
they're not behind, but
Right.
they're so far underwater that it might make sense to strategically walk away from the house if they're eliminating a bunch of other debt at the same time.
Dave, but you have to understand, a lot of people that come into you, and I know that come into me, they're fixated on the real estate. I mean, real estate, there's nothing, there's no other piece of real estate quite like the real estate that I have, which is true. I mean,
It's
you
houses
agree, right?
and cars. That's what people
Right.
care about, being able to
Exactly.
keep.
Yep.
They don't want to lose in many cases, even though they're problematic in terms of equity situation and or, whether or not it's in good repair.
But they say, what are they going to do? Listen here, I have to live somewhere, okay? Look here, this is the house that I put some sweat equity into, okay? And, and let's face it, it's a pain to be able to move in any event. You know what I usually tell people? I usually say, hey, listen, would you exchange, if I gave you a $10 bill, would you give me a $100 bill? And they look at me like, what, Dave?
Crazy.
Like I'm crazy. And it's the same thing, but on a
don't even
larger
know you.
scale. Exactly. And they don't even know me. Well, if they did, I don't know. Maybe they might have a different kind of thought there. So, so you think that it's probably more wise for them, because they don't have children either, because that's consideration, to maybe walk away from the house?
Yeah, but here's the other problem here, the other thing that we have to consider. They only have $7,500 worth of credit card debt. So they can almost maybe get out of this debt on their own if they can negotiate a settlement or reduce some of their expenses. What I would not recommend is touching that 401k to pay off the debt. That's a mistake.
But if you're looking at the house, so that's another $55,000 plus the $7,500 now, that might make it a little bit more palatable, right?
It might, but we have good income here. See, that's the thing. We've got about $6,000 per month coming in, so we've got some room to negotiate a little bit. They can handle this if they want to. They're in a unique situation where they can go either way.
What's going to happen though to their $45,000 in retirement?
Well, it's 100% protected. If it's ERISA qualified, it's protected under law.
So if it's a 401k, if it's from their employer, it's qualified.
Yeah, as long as they cannot touch it without a penalty,
right,
then the bankruptcy court and the bankruptcy trustee cannot touch it at all.
And
that's the deal.
And that's the deal. But this is what a lot of people, the mistake they make before they come and they call you, or they come and they call me, right, is that they take and they drain their retirement. And so now, basically from what you said, right, they take an asset that's 100% protected and they convert it into something now that is not.
Yeah, they've liquidated it to pay creditors, only to find that they didn't have enough money to actually eliminate their debt, or they're still running a deficit. Now they've lost their retirement. So
and they're still in the same position.
They're in the same position, or worse, they've lost their nest egg and they have a house with no equity. So this is a tough call, but it's going to depend on whether or not they want to keep the house. But it's important for the viewers to understand that if they are in this situation, there sometimes are two ways they can go, and neither one is necessarily wrong. It just has to do with what their intentions are with their property.
And what they can handle, what they expect. Like if I'm expecting to get a raise or to be promoted or something like that, that's a consideration I should take into account, right?
Absolutely.
All right. Let's look at here, Christian and Mary. And they're in a Lake County couple here, and they own a home worth about $320,000. All right. And there are two loans on that property. One with a payoff of $172,000 and another with a payoff of $70,000. They have a 2006 Acura and an outright value of $4,000. So I'm guessing, because it doesn't say anything here, they own that. So $4,000 there. They also have a 2010 Honda with a market value of $18,000, and they also owe $18,000 on it. So that's, kind of cancels each other out there. Have a checking and savings account with an approximate balance of $2,200. It's the same thing that we talked about in our last example. People, they get their paychecks and it comes in, again, it's at the time of the consultation. And we understand that when you come in that, hey, we know that you have to pay these other bills that you have. So it doesn't mean that, that's your savings. It just means that, that's what you have right now as we're sitting down and talking. They have about $85,000 in their ERISA qualified account, so in retirement, so that's pretty good. They expect a tax refund of about $5,000 in this year coming up, thanks to the Obama benefits that they have here. And they're married, they have a couple of children, 12 and 16, and they're both working, which is pretty good. One is a director of billing, nonetheless. I thought that was, I got a little, chuckle from that one.
Very true.
Yeah, and the other as a service tech. They bring in, and again, I know what you can tell me. You're going to tell me that's going to be net here, $7,100 per month. But their monthly expenses only total about $6,400. So this is one of the exceptions. They really don't, they're not spending more than they're taking in at this point.
They have a $700 surplus, to be exact.
$700. And again, depending upon, like you said, you could tweak it, you can get rid of some things, and maybe realize a little bit more on that one. No student loans or tax debt, so that's something we're going to worry about. At least not yet, but they got those kids, so they got that to look forward to in the future. The issue for them is $70,000 worth of credit card debt, and
that's a killer.
$15,000 worth of medical debt. So 70, 80, I mean, that's, whew, that's a pretty tough pill to swallow there. And again, same thing, should I file? And if so, which chapter?
Well, I think they're limited here. They're limited into doing a Chapter 13 reorganization.
Why so, Dave?
For the simple fact that they're carrying a monthly surplus. Income minus expenses is showing a surplus. So right off the bat, they're knocked out of a Chapter 7 fresh start. Their income says they have the ability to repay, maybe not all of their debt,
right,
but a portion of their debt over time. They also, importantly, have equity in their real estate. You had mentioned the house worth $320.
Right.
Between the two loans, they owe about $242. So they have significant equity in the real estate, which they wouldn't be able to do a Chapter 7 for that reason.
Let me ask you this, because this is very important for some people to know sometimes. They get a lot of people that are kind of in between, and we're looking at different kinds of things. So what is the rule? If, if you're doing a Chapter 13 and trying to get rid of some stuff, what is it? If what you'd have to pay back in a Chapter 7, right?
Yeah,
is what you're going to be stuck with in a Chapter 13.
Right. There's a liquidation test, which basically says if the couple did a Chapter 7, what would be available for creditors? Whatever that dollar amount is, that's what the creditors must at least get in a Chapter 13, which is a 3 to 5 year repayment plan through the court. So it might work out where the $700 surplus per month over 60 months is $42,000.
Well, wait a second, Dave. Look, they said they've got a Honda that's a market value of 18 and they owe 18. So, and assuming this isn't a lease, right? Okay,
right.
That's what it look like. So whatever they owe on that, which is $18,000, is also going to get wrapped up into the plan, right? So that's going to free up whatever that car payment is to additionally fund the plan. So instead of $700, let's say their car payment is $500. So that's going to be $7, $8, $9, $10, $11, $12, $1,300, right?
Right.
So instead of that, that's what it's also going to encompass. So it's going to be even larger than that.
Right, but the Chapter 13 is also going to include the payment of the car.
Right.
So $20,000 is going to go to the car. The remainder is going to go towards the unsecured creditors, such as the credit cards and the medical bills. And we're not going to know how much they're going to have to pay back until the creditors file what's known as a proof of claim.
Right.
This is where a creditor gets a notice. They file something with the bankruptcy court claiming what amount is owed. It goes into a big pot from which the trustee is going to repay everybody. So some of these 13s are a little bit like a puzzle. You can't say for certain what the plan payment's going to be or what percentage is going to get paid back until after the claims date has passed and once the case is confirmed or approved by the court.
So there'll be a little tweaking coming up on this situation. But as it relates to the car, as long as it's not a lease, they're not going to have to make that payment, so that's going to free up whatever that is.
Right.
So that'll make it just bigger, and so that will increase the amount they're going to have to pay. And again, in a Chapter 13, what's the general deal with respect to secured creditors?
Well, secured creditors are typically going to get paid back in full.
100%.
100% at a standard interest rate, depending on when the car was purchased.
When
there are
you
some
say
things
standard,
we can do.
So what if
Contract rate.
So if I agreed to pay 27% interest, that's what I'm stuck with?
Well, in certain cases, we can reduce it down to 5 or 6%, but it depends on when that car was purchased. Depends on whether there's a co-debtor. If you're trying to pay it back in full to protect the co-debtor, there's some intricacies there that we really can't get into. But bottom line is, if you have available money per month, this couple does, they're going to be forced, if at all, into a Chapter 13, which is a repayment plan of all or a portion of their debt over 3 to 5 years. Chapter 7 Fresh Start does not apply for them.
Okay, so we've looked at a couple of different scenarios here. And again, that's why it's so important for the folks at home to go and seek out a qualified bankruptcy attorney so that their unique situation can be analyzed, and then you can provide them with a action plan.
Yeah, and you certainly want to do that before you start liquidating 401ks, before you start getting second mortgages and title loans, and all those different things that can cause you problems. Giving away property to get it out of your name, thinking you can do that.
Well, that's something that's very important, because I see some of that too. And you should tell our folks at home, our viewers, obviously it's fraudulent if I'm going to just give away a property and then go ahead and claim bankruptcy and everything else.
Yeah.
But the general deal on property, or even charging on your credit card, is what?
Well, you certainly don't want to use the credit cards if you have already made a decision to file. Anything within 60 to 90 days is presumed to be non-dischargeable unless you can prove that it was for a living expense or a necessity. The problem is a lot of people will come to see me, they'll know the rule, and then they'll go do what they want to do anyway. thinking they can get away with it, and it usually comes back to bite them.
So basically, in other words, I'm going to do bankruptcy anyway, and I need this new big screen television, so I'm going to go out and buy it.
Yeah, or I have a little bit room left on these 3 cards. I'm going to take them to the limit, not understanding that, hey, those are fraudulent charges. The credit card company knows exactly when you charged it.
Exactly.
And they can also find out when you came to see your attorney, of course, when you filed your case, when you made your first payment. So, you got to be smart about it. You can't be abusive.
You got to be honest, Dave. That's pretty much what it boils down to.
Bankruptcy is for the honest debtor. That is what the code says.
Wrong with that. Okay.
Absolutely.
All right. Let's look at this other situation here. This is Kenny, who comes to us from Cook County, Illinois. He's not a homeowner, so we got no real estate here. He has a 1996 Ford Taurus. That's paid, no debt on the vehicle. I mean, I don't know, doesn't say how many miles he's got on that or anything, but it's 1996. I would guess probably $2,500 or less is just a rough guesstimate for that kind of vehicle.
It's a very old vehicle.
Yeah. And then, what do we have here? He's got no checking or savings account, minor household goods and clothing, no 401k, no property whatsoever, none of that stuff. He's single, but he has 3 dependent children. He's working as an assistant, making only about $1,800 per month. And in terms of monthly expenses, he's spending exactly what he's making, about $1,800.
He knows how to budget.
Knows how to budget. Well, I don't know, Dave. It's not a budget. 18 in, 18 out.
It's working for him.
What are you going to do? I mean, that's the epitome, right, of living paycheck to paycheck for sure. All right. And he'd no student loans, no tax debt, no co-debtors. He says he'd like to file a Chapter 13 to repay the debt, which is about approximately $20,000 in credit card debt. He's not sure if he can afford it, though, however. Should he file, and if so, which chapter?
Well, it's admirable that he wants to do a Chapter 13 and repay.
Yep.
He doesn't have the ability. Like we said earlier, he's bringing in $1,800, he's spending $1,800. There's nothing available for creditors whatsoever, unless his income improves. He has no assets. He's a Chapter 7 all day if he wants to avail himself of that kind of relief, which would be filing of a petition, appearance in front of a trustee 4 to 6 weeks after the case is filed,
Right.
taking a financial management course, taking a credit counseling course, and wiping his hands of this debt. It might be the best thing for him. He's got $20,000 worth of credit card debt with no surplus per month. So I don't know.
Dave, what's interesting, though, is it says $1,800 per month, but, it doesn't say, and I don't know, you have the intake form, what he's paying. Is he paying any of that $1,800 toward his credit cards?
No.
So it's all unrelated to the credit card debt.
Right. The credit card balances are increasing because he's not able to make those payments. Right. But the $1,800 is going towards his rent, his transportation, utilities, food, clothing, and of course the support of his 3 minor children. So there's not enough money here to reorganize under Chapter 13. So again, it's nice that he wants to do a Chapter 13. He'd like to repay. He doesn't want to beat anybody out of the debt, but he has to come to the realization that he cannot afford to pay it. The credit cards are just increasing. Something's going to give here. He's eventually going to be sued, possible garnishment, possible bank citation. That's where they freeze your account, take anything over a $4,000 statutory exemption amount. So he's got a tough road to go. I mean, based on what you see here, what would you recommend to him?
I recommend the same thing, but the question is, hey, listen, if there's nobody chasing after him, does he need to do it right now, or, can he hold on?
He can hold on. He can see if his situation is going to improve. He's able to budget a little bit.
Because you can always do your Chapter 7, as long as, all of a sudden he doesn't get a, $100,000 a year job.
He could always do that. I'm a little concerned about his very old vehicle. So that's the situation for him. Thanks for joining me, Jesse.
You bet, Dave.
As always,
Thank
you can reach us at questions@legalactiontv.com. That's questions@legalactiontv.com. My name is David Siegel. This is Legal Action. We will see you next time. Take care.